Hi, thank you for joining me in this episode of GradSWE UCLA presents Women in Science, We Have the Power to Change the World. My name is Yifan Gao, a PhD candidate from Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at UCLA. I'm also the International Student Event Officer at GradSWE UCLA. GradSWE stands for the Graduate Student Community of Society of Women Engineers. Our goal is to provide support to graduate students and help them shine in their future career. We are going to host a series of interviews to female scientists, and we hope we can encourage more women to join the community of STEM. Our guest today is Isabella Lin. She's an MD PhD candidate from University of California, Los Angeles. She's from Isabella Lab at UCLA. Their research areas are genetic disease modeling, genetic architecture of disease. Feel free to check their website if you're interested in the research. Hi, Essie. Welcome to our channel. It's our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to see you.
Yeah, me too. So I'm hoping if you could introduce yourself and your research to our audience.
My name is Izzy, and I'm a current MD PhD student. I'm about halfway through both my medical school and my research PhD program. I have my PhD training in human genetics in the Arboleta lab. We study rare genetic disorders, especially ones that affect chromatin modifying genes.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a really interesting research. So because Essie and I, we work in the same institution and our bench were like next to each other. So I basically know she worked really hard and also her lab was like really good. So because I also work in a biomedical lab, so I kind of have the sense of like, like why biomedical study is very attracting to people. But my question will be like why you are interested in biomedical field and why you selected UCLA Caltech Medical Science Training Program. So would you like to introduce the program to us as well?
Sure. I'll go in the first part, biomedical field, and why I'm interested in that. I'm very passionate about scientific research, but also very interested in patient care. And the biomedical field and human genetics research, that intersection there is very applicable to a physician scientist career. I had some MD PhD mentors while I was in undergrad, and they were bridging that field between bench to bedside. So I wanted to continue in these fields, which allow me to do just that, bring what I find at the research bench to the patient bedside and back to the bench for further research. And for choosing UCLA Caltech, I really like a collaborative nature. So just like you and I, we get to see each other in lab. I can ask you questions, you can ask me questions, especially late at night or on the weekends when nobody else is around. So that has been great. UCLA is both collaborative in the research field and also in the clinical departments that I've been fortunate enough to experience. I also have a very supportive PI in my PhD, and she has many qualities that I aspire to, and many research and clinical mentors that have guided me in choosing the path I'm on now. And LA in general, I love the weather, the year-round ability to go running outside, proximity to the beach, lots of good food. Lots of good coffee. That's important for grad school too.
That's true. I really like UCLA, like the LA, the most like UCLA especially like attracted to me because when I first came here, the weather was like super great. I was like, that's it. That's the university I wanted to work for like 5 years.
Exactly. And when you're looking in terms of like 5 years or in my program 8 years, you want somewhere that you'll be happy.
Yeah, that's true. So like UCLA Caltech training program is like you're gonna work in UCLA at both Caltech or
so the UCLA Caltech MSTP, it's a collaboration between UCLA and Caltech. So we complete our clinical training as part of David Geffen School of Medicine here at UCLA. And then our research training, we can choose either UCLA or Caltech, depending on the lab that you're interested in. I think I have 4 out of 15 MD PhD classmates that are at Caltech, and the other 11 of us were here at UCLA.
Okay, so basically you can choose like what lab you wanted to stay in, like near UCLA or in Caltech. Wow, that's a really
Exactly.
yeah. So I'm the PhD candidate you just said. So I'm a student in engineering department, even I'm working in the biomedical lab. So I am not quite familiar with like the MD, PhD, like have like both titles. So I have a friend like he wanted to apply for MD, PhD program, but he told me it was like really competitive. So I was wondering like what is the difference between just pursuing a PhD degree or and with like MD PhD. And also we are curious about what's the life of MD PhD students.
Yeah, sure. I think PhD, you obviously become an expert in whatever field you study. It's hard, it's grueling. You kind of get dropped into the middle of an ocean and you're just told to go find land, but you can't see anything. Um, and then medical school, you're kind of on a whitewater raft, you're going really fast, you're learning a lot as you go, but there's a path that you're going down. And then the MD PhD blends the two together. So you start with 2 years of med school typically. And then halfway during your medical school training, you go into the graduate school. And that's where you have to find your own way, figure out what your research interest is and whether that might be related to what you're interested in clinically at the hospital or at a clinic. And then once you finished graduate school, you go back to medical school and finish that clinical training. So for me, like the MD PhD training, it integrates both the science and the medical education. And in PhD, in graduate school, you get that basis, that foundation of medicine, and figure out how you can intertwine medicine and science. And you take your coursework, your formal training, your research methodology, and you weave them all together. And at the end, you can either choose to stay in a more research setting, a more clinical setting, or some blend of both to try and benefit patients.
Got it. So after you graduate, you're gonna work in clinic, like in the clinical trial, or you can choose to work in like just being like biomedical researcher.
Yeah, you could choose to be in any of those fields. You could choose, like academia. That is what my PI is doing. So PI for principal investigator. She's also an MD PhD graduate of UCLA. So she now runs a lab. She also has a clinical appointment in pathology. But you could also choose to go down the biomedical or biotech route. Or you could choose to go into a fully clinical setting or some blend of all of those.
Got it. So it's like, it sounds like a really fancy title, but I know like there will be like a lot of work behind it. Like, is it super busy, like in terms of your coursework and your research? Like, since you have to like blend it, like balance it.
I would say during medical school, you are like a regular medical student. So you take the same classes as every other medical student. And then during the summers, you do research rotations, which PhD students normally do in their first year. And then during graduate school, I feel essentially like a graduate student. Take the same courses, the same coursework. I do have a shorter, slightly more rushed timeline. But depending on how much pressure you want to put on yourself, how fast you go, how fast you finish that PhD, it's a little dependent on how much work you put in and also luck, which is
like research.
Which is research, exactly.
So basically you have like 2 years of medical school, like do like medical training like regular medical students, and then you can like do the rotation in summer, and after 2 years you basically choose your research direction and enter the lab like regular PhD candidate, and then like after that you can go back to the medical school and then to like see if your research will be transferred into like real medical train like benefits to the patients. Wow, that sounds really interesting. Like the most interesting part of doing research is to see what you're doing and to transfer to, so for engineering, it's like to a product, but for you, it's like to like a real medical treatment for patient, right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And for me right now, I study a rare genetic disorder called Boring-Opitz syndrome.
Yeah.
There's only about like 50 of these children that are
Oh,
in literature worldwide, so it's a very rare disorder.
yeah.
But here at UCLA, we have a registry, and every year there's an annual conference. So
Uh-huh.
being able to see the patients whose samples I'm working on,
Yeah.
the samples I'm researching, it's really quite
Yeah.
rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah. Like rewarding, like you can feel like what you're doing, what you're researching is actually will benefit people. Yeah,
That
that's
that is the
yeah,
goal.
that's the
Yeah.
charm for like doing medical study. So even I'm not like a real medical student, but I feel like if I can see the nanoparticle, like it can be generally produced, and then I will like package something because I'm studying both, like in the lab. I feel like I can see that is like the most rewarding moment for
So
me, right?
rewarding.
Yeah.
So rewarding. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So looking at your education background, I noticed that you came from Australia and then decided to study in UC Berkeley for your undergrad. So would you mind, because it's like a big transition, like, for me, I'm also that international student. So would you mind telling us why you decided to study in US, and like if you have any interesting story behind it, like a lot of international student like me, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I was actually born in Florida,
Uh-huh.
but I grew up in Australia up
Yeah.
until the end of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had actually enrolled and started at undergrad in Australia in my
Yeah.
hometown. I was doing an MBBS program, which is bachelor's, undergrad, and med
Yeah.
school combined for a 7-year program. So I'm technically a university dropout
Oh,
because I left that university. But I was studying in the University of Queensland, which is
yeah.
my home state, and my brother was studying at University of Melbourne, which is in another state. And when we
Mm-hmm.
both found out that we'd gotten into Berkeley,
Yeah.
we decided why not try something different.
Yeah.
And my parents were really encouraging and supportive. They felt that we should see the world a bit
Mm-hmm.
more while we were younger. That way we
Yeah.
could decide where we might want to live further down the line. So my brother's actually born at Alta Bates in Berkeley. So it was like,
Oh,
we joke that he's like a salmon coming back home.
yeah.
So the two of us ended up moving here to the States in 2014 to start undergrad. Had no idea where we would be
Mm.
living, what school housing was like, didn't have a bank account here,
Oh, yeah.
didn't have a
Yeah.
phone number here. It was a big adjustment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, especially for undergrad students. I came Berkeley when I was like already graduate. I cannot imagine how can I like deal with all the stuff when I was like 18 years old. So yeah, it's like a huge challenge.
Yeah. Big challenge, but definitely worth it.
Yeah.
And the friends that I've made along the way,
Yeah.
yeah, they've definitely pulled me through. Um, so yeah, after during undergrad, both my brother and I studied abroad in the UK as well.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I've been very lucky being able to experience the US,
Yeah.
Australia, and the UK.
Yeah.
And now with conferences, I can travel a little more
Mm-hmm.
too and see different countries, different
See the
states,
word. Yeah.
see the world exactly. Yeah.
So I know these are all really big challenges, whether you choose to study here and you decided to like be an MD, PhD candidate. So as a female scientist, this question will be for my organization, GradSWE, the Graduate Student Committee of Women in Science, Women Engineers. So as a female scientist, what challenges have you met in the way that you made these big decisions of your academic life and personal life?
For sure. So I guess there's a classic, every
Yeah.
time you meet with extended family, they ask you when you're going to get married, when you're going to have
Yeah.
children. I bet you get that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's having to choose between pursuing your career and your interests or as
and
female, you
study.
kind of have a ticking
Yeah, the
biological
family,
clock.
yeah.
Exactly. Um, I think trying not to feel that pressure and
Mm-hmm.
staying true to what you're interested in is very important. Um, and then I'm also much more of a quieter
Yeah,
person in general, less
yeah,
assertive. So I think being female, I have to
yeah.
you have to find the line between being a bit more assertive
Mm-hmm.
and saying,
Or,
this is what I'm interested in, and this is the path
mm-hmm.
I want to go down, and not be pushed into something
Mm-hmm.
else by other people's opinions.
Yeah, so basically like finding your own way, find like listening to yourself and find what you actually like to do in the future is really important. So I know it's
Exactly.
like, yeah, especially for female scientists, sometimes people will like give them a question like how can you balance life and work, but they won't give like male scientists the same question. So that's exactly
Exactly.
what we are facing. So I really wanted this channel to encourage more women to join the community of STEM. So I learned like a new term like STEM, STEEMM. So the second M is for like medical field.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
first math is mathematics. So and the
Hmm.
second math is medical. Right.
That's wonderful.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So is there any female role models that you look up to during like all your journeys like in academia life and everything?
Yeah. So I would say maybe like two main female role models that I look up to. First would be my mom. She
Yeah.
doesn't work in science whatsoever, but
Mm.
is a very strong woman, has great values. And she reminds me every day with these long texts that are
Yeah.
like, don't lose yourself in your work, go home
Wow.
early, enjoy life,
Mm.
which I need to remind myself to do
Yeah.
because it's very easy to get sucked into your work and be like, oh, I'll just stay a little longer, I'll just do one more
Yeah.
experiment. But that can always wait for the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then my other one would be my mentor,
Mm-hmm.
Valerie Arboleda.
Yeah.
She's a physician scientist and also a recent graduate of UCLA MSTP.
Mm-hmm.
So encourages me to like pursue my interests and supports my research and my explorations. She also has she also faces like similar issues as a female scientist.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember one time she was telling me that even as a postdoc, she would get confused as a graduate student or an undergrad, and even now as faculty.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes other faculty that don't know she's faculty will try and recruit her to their lab, thinking that she's a student.
Yeah.
So that reminds me to like assert myself in a
Mm-hmm.
way that I'm a graduate student now. I'm not an undergrad, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I feel like PhD is like finding your niche, like your research niche, and also like your comfort zone. I will put like a because it's not the real comfort zone. When you step out, it's like the comfort zone like we feel like really confident in and everything. So it's like a really important, like a really difficult but also really rewarding journey for us. And also I feel like your mom is really like all those like warm tasks they're like you will inspire you and also encourage you to face the life like for tomorrow and everything and also to help you to take care of yourself. Yeah,
Oh,
it's really important. So my last question will be, do you have any advice that you would like to offer to women who are considering pursue STEM related field?
definitely. Uh, they definitely find these strong mentors.
Yeah,
I'm very lucky to have my PI as a very strong mentor and
yeah,
supporter. Even my old PI at Berkeley, Dr. Lole, he's
yeah,
always supported my path and where I want to go and what I want to pursue.
hmm,
So whether female, male mentors,
yeah,
just a few years above you or like many, many years and research careers above
yeah,
you, like having those strong mentors. I think something else would be having realistic expectations. I came into grad school thinking, oh, I'm gonna, try and push out a
mm,
3-year
yeah,
PhD. I'm gonna get this thing done in like 2 months. And that having to let go of those expectations that I put on myself, because research never happens in the way that you expect it to, and things always take longer. You have to troubleshoot, or some machine is down, or something's close for the holiday, or
Don't tell me about it.
or there's a winter storm on the East Coast and all your reagents are delayed.
Yeah.
So letting go of those expectations, I think finally would be finding a good work-life balance. I definitely struggle with that. And I admire some people in my lab who have a pretty strict, like, okay, I'm going to work from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That is my work day. If I need to stay later or come in on another time, that's like on a need by need basis. Versus for me, I'll just drift into lab all the time.
I can see you every day. Like, if I can't find you in the bench next to me, I can find you in the like the I think it's like the BSC, the biosafety cabinet room in your lab. So like we're like weekend buddies.
We are weekend buddies. So I'm trying to be better about that. I have my strict cutoff now at like 7 p.m. because then I'll bike over to go climb. And the climbing gym closes at 10 p.m. I want to climb for 2 hours. It takes me 1 hour to get there. So I'm like, I have to leave at 7 p.m.
It's really nice to find a hobby. Like whether, for me, it's like I start to like swimming a lot. So it helped me to sort of find the energy to like support me for whether I want to stay late or not, or for my next day work. It's really important. Also, because the first suggestions you gave is find a mentor that like even it's like a few years older than you and have more experience. I feel like that's a really important part because like for me, I'm already fourth year PhD candidate. I have a lot of experience that I gained from troubleshooting. So if someone really wanted me to like really ask me about questions, I really want to give them all my experience and just to help them. Right. So I think the first one is really important. And the second one is work-life balance or
work-life balance and also managing expectations.
Managing expectations. Because like when I first started my PhD, my mom asked me a question, can you finish PhD in 3 years? I heard that my students in physics department, he finished the PhD in 3 years. Can you do that? I was like, no way. I cannot. So there's like really, basically to lower down the expectation will make people feel like more rewarding. Like, it's like 5 years, I'm gonna finish in 5 years, but I'm finishing at 4.5 years, so I'm excellent.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for all these like amazing advice and sharing your experience to our audience. Thank you so much.
It's been an honor. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. Thank you and bye. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Women in Science. We have the power to change the world. Please hit the subscribe button and follow us to hear more stories from female scientists.